learn from all kinds of people. For instance, if I got a brain tumor and I'm looking for a neurosurgeon, my first question is not, did you read your Bible this morning? My first question to this brain surgeon is not, did you go to church last week? My question is not even, are you a Christian? Do you believe in God? My question is, have you ever done this before? Because the guy might be cheating on his wife, but if he's a brain surgeon, he's a brain surgeon. Does that make sense? And so it is nonsense to say you have to agree with everybody in order to learn from them. This guy is dishonest. You don't want to learn that part from him. But there are some things that he did right that you need to do with your money. I want us to look at financial health. Now, it may surprise you that Jesus actually talked more about money than he did heaven or hell. In fact, half of all of the parables that Jesus told are about money, half of them. In fact, in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, 1 out of every 6 verses is about money and money management. Why? Because money can dominate our lives, and money influences our lives for either good or bad. It can be used for great things, it can be used for bad things, either way. And we spend so much of our time thinking about it, working for it, earning it, studying it, saving it, and investing it, all these different things. And if you don't learn to manage your money, it will manage you. Now, we're going to look at the most misunderstood story of Jesus in the entire Bible. It's a doozy. And it's in Luke chapter 16. And the reason why this is a confusing passage is because it appears that Jesus is approving of dishonesty. He's not. He just uses a clever crook as the hero of the story, and he's using it for shock value. Here's the story of Jesus. Jesus said, there once was a rich man who enlisted a manager to take care of his property. But the manager was accused of wasting his master's possessions. So the owner called him in and said, you must now give an account of your stewardship and report what you've done with what I entrusted to you, because your time as a manager is ending. Now the manager thought, what am I going to do now? I'm losing my job, but I'm not strong enough to dig ditches, and I'm too proud to beg. I love that part. He goes, I know what I'll do. I know what I'll do so that after I lose my job, I'll have plenty of friends to take care of me. So he called in everybody who was in debt to his master. And he asked the first guy, how much do you owe my master? The guy says, 800 gallons of olive oil. So the manager said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Tear up the bill and write a new bill that says you only owe 400 gallons. Okay, this is just going to be between me and you. We're not going to tell this to the boss. And next the manager found another debtor and he asked him, he said, how much do you owe? And the guy said, 1,000 bushels of wheat. And he said, the manager replied, okay, here's what I want you to do. Change your bill to say you only owe 800 bushels. So he's doing this under the table, obviously without permission. Now, when the master, this is the owner, heard what the dishonest manager had done, he still praised him. He praised him for his shrewdness. For worldly people are more shrewd in handling their affairs than are those who belong to the light. Now that is a strange story. In the next couple of verses, Jesus gives a little bit into the meaning of it. And he says in verse 9, so Jesus said, I tell you, use your worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves. What? Am I supposed to buy friends? This is getting even weirder. Use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. He's talking about heaven. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and who's ever dishonest with little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, he's saying, if you're not a good money manager, if you're not taking care of the money that I've given you, if you've been untrustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who's going to trust you with true riches, spiritual riches, the real riches of life? And if you have not been trustworthy with somebody else's property, who's going to give you property of your own? No servant can serve two masters. He'll either hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Notice he didn't say you should not. He said you can't. It's impossible. You cannot serve God and money. Now that may be the most frustrating, the most shocking, and the most misunderstood story that Jesus ever told. Now it's important to note a couple things. First, Jesus is not praising the guy's dishonesty. He's praising his shrewdness, and we'll get back to that in just a minute, what that means. He's not praising his dishonesty. Second, you can learn from anybody if you know the right questions. You don't have to agree with everything a person believes or does to actually learn from them. This is very, very important, because today people think because I disagree with you on something, then I can't learn from you on something. Well, that's nonsense. If you can only learn from people that you agree with 100%, well, guess what? You're not going to learn anything, because nobody agrees with you 100%. Have you talked to your wife lately? Or your husband? Or your boyfriend or your girlfriend? Nobody's going to agree with you all the time. And you don't have to agree with everything a person believes or does or acts or whatever in order for them to actually teach you something. And the second thing Jesus tells this story, the reason he tells it, is because most believers are poor money managers. Many of you are not very good at managing your money. You have no emergency savings saved up for an emergency. You have little or no retirement saved up. You're living from hand to mouth. You're living on the bills. In fact, you're living beyond your means. It's not buy it as soon as I get the money. It's buy it before I get the money. And you're deeply in debt. Now, the other thing I want you to notice, who is Jesus telling this to? He's telling this to the Pharisees. Now, who are the Pharisees? The Pharisees are the religious leader of Jesus' day. And here are the characteristics of a Pharisee. Number one, they're incredibly arrogant. They're not humble. They're incredibly prideful. They're self-righteous. They're judgmental. They're demeaning. They're demanding. And they really don't like people. But the number one characteristic of a Pharisee is they're a hypocrite. They say one thing and believe something else. And they tell people to do things that they themselves don't even do. So Jesus loved to poke at the Pharisees. He loved to just kind of pop them in the eye. He loved to pop their balloon. Jesus had an amazing ability to comfort the afflicted while afflicting the comfortable. And he still does that today. If you're in pain, any kind of pain, Jesus wants to comfort you. If you're comfortable, Jesus probably wants to put you in pain. Because there's some things that need to change in your life. You become very, comfortable with the status quo. So here, Jesus knew that the Pharisees loved money. That's why he tells this shocking story and makes a crook a hero. Look at this verse up on the screen. This is the rest of the chapter that I was reading from. It says, the Pharisees dearly loved money. So when they heard what Jesus said, they made fun of him. But Jesus told them, you're always making yourselves look good, but God sees what's in your heart. The things that most people think are important are worthless as far as God is concerned. The things that most people think matter, God says, they don't matter at all. What do most people think matters? Possessions, pleasure, power, prestige, popularity, sex, status, salary, money, lust, power, those kind of things. God says, those things really don't matter. Those aren't the important things in life. We've been talking about the verse in the Bible that says, don't conform to the world's pattern. Don't fall into their standard of culture, but be transformed by the way you think. I'm going to teach you a whole new way to think about money today, and it is radically counterculture. What God says about money is the exact opposite of everything you've been taught about money.